We is good. Yep. We're back with overtime here on WOTM. Mark, a famous name that a lot of people around the state of Alabama know, and a lot of people around the country and the world know because he built up that fame at the University of Florida, is Tim Tebow, making a return back to football after a baseball career that didn't go all the way to the pros. He played with the New York Mets organization, but Tim Tebow is now reportedly going to play for the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're expected to sign a one-year deal, which will reunite him with Urban Meyer, his head coach down with Florida, also putting him back in a league where he played earlier with the Denver Broncos, played quarterback there back in the 2011 season, back in football for the first time since the 2015 NFL preseason. Spent some time with both the Denver Broncos, also spent a little time with the New England Patriots as well. Didn't really pan out as far as the NFL quarterback goes, but the real story is the position he's playing. He's going to play tight end in the NFL, according to the reports. Obviously, they have the #1 pick in Trevor Lawrence, so Trevor Lawrence will be the quarterback for the Jacksonville Jaguars. But going to tight end, this is a position, obviously, he has not played on any level, not the high school level, the college level, or the NFL. I got a lot of questions for you, but first, I'll start with the basic one. Do you think that he will work? Do you think that this will work as Tim Tebow now makes a return back to the NFL?
Look, I've seen weird things. I mean, there are things I clearly did not expect to work, and they did work.
Right.
The thing I never doubt Tebow with is his willingness to try new things, his persistence, and he seems to be able to motivate himself to learn things really quickly. But I never liked him as a quarterback. I mean, he could babysit if I had kids. You could babysit my dogs or whatever. That's how much I trust him as a human being.
Right.
But I never really liked him as a quarterback. As a baseball player, I thought he did okay, but he tried that. This is another thing for him to try. At 6'2", 230. He's got to be able to run fast enough to be able to beat some of these faster, bigger defenders that he's going to be going against. We know he can run the ball. We see him do that in Florida. Could be a little different now, but I think that Lawrence could learn a lot from him. Maybe that's the other reason why he's being brought in here. Is kind of to whisper in his ear.
More of like a mentor role.
Yeah, a little bit, because, I mean, why not? I mean, he's probably a great guy to have around for young kids.
And he knows how Urban coaches as well.
Yeah, and he's a winner. I mean, basically, he's still a winner. I mean, look, that year with the Broncos was absolutely miraculous. Then when he went to the Jets, that was just a bad spot for him. And then he didn't even wind up playing for them. Now, if you don't play for the Jets, you know there's something wrong. So, and then after that, his career was over, and you never saw him back again. He wasn't good enough to play quarterback in the pros. We know that. Even the way he won was so miraculous, some of those games. It just wasn't normal. Low completion percentage, didn't really pass for many yards as far as yards per completion. So he wasn't fit for the NFL. But as a tight end, I don't know. Do I expect him to do good? No, but stranger things have happened.
Right. One of the things about the move to tight end is there's a lot of people who said, coming out of Florida, he should have done this, and he should have made the move to tight end. Obviously, he was steadfast on being a quarterback. Josh McDaniels took a shot on him, got him in the first round. That cost him his job. He's now back in New England. But do you think that it's a skill? It's a skill set. We see. Okay, I'll put it to you this way: we see a lot of NBA basketball guys, college basketball guys. Tony Gonzalez was this. You have Antonio Gates was this. Jimmy Graham was this. College basketball guys going into the NFL and playing tight end and playing at a high level. And I'm not saying playing tight end is easy, but it does seem that the skills are transferable from different sports, different positions, and going from a different position or a different sport, basketball or some other position, tackle. A lot of tackles who are too small to play on the line, they'll put them at tight end. Do you think it's a skill set that's transferable in order to make him productive enough to keep him on the 53-man roster?
Well, I'll tell you what's interesting is the tight end position's changing. So it's not just a 6'5", 280 guy that can block and he's going to eventually catch the ball and just kind of rumble down the field. These guys are athletic. These guys are fast. They can do multiple things well. They can block. They can get out and catch passes, but they can also run with the ball if they need to. And I think that's where Tebow would probably fit in okay.
Right.
Because he can do a lot of those things. I mean, he's a talented football player. He's a talented athlete. And if they can, I don't know, maybe they can fit something in for him.
Right.
But I don't think he's fast enough to be able to beat some of these defenders that he has to beat. I mean, these guys are going to be, 6'3", 6'4", 230, 240, and can run like a 4.4. So I don't know if he's fast enough to do that. I don't know if he's big enough at 235, 6'3", 235, to block consistently and take that kind of pounding. I don't think so. I mean, it's nice to talk about, but I don't think so.
Urban Meyer is first-year head coach. Tim Tebow is going to be a first-year tight end. Trevor Lawrence is a rookie quarterback. What do you even expect with the Jacksonville Jaguars? Do you expect this? I mean, obviously, I don't think people are predicting them to win a division. But do you expect them to at least be competitive in this division and or make a run? Or do you think this is a complete disaster?
No, a complete disaster, no, because they have a coach that won in college. I don't know how that's going to translate to the pros.
Right.
Look, I didn't think Pete Carroll was going to be successful either that second time,
right?
Because he was awful that first year. First year went 6-10 with the Jets. They fired him. That led to Kotite. Then he takes over a Patriot team that went to the Super Bowl with Parcells, and then he leads to Belichick. Then he goes to USC, kind of recreates himself, and he had a couple bad years with the Seahawks before he drafted Russell Wilson. That's really what helped him kind of turn that around.
Right.
And then he's won a Super Bowl. He should have won 2. But so you don't know. You don't know how a guy's going to coach in the pros compared to college because it's so different. Look, if Saban can't win in the pros, and we know he's a total winner in college, it's just a different game. Do I think Saban probably would be a little different now? Maybe.
Yeah. Because
he's learned a little bit.
Also, he would have had Drew Brees then. He wanted Drew Brees at the time, and then that's a shift in the landscape. That they said he wanted Drew Brees the entire time. If Drew Brees had been a Miami Dolphin instead of New Orleans Saint, they would listen to the doctors. The doctors said that they didn't think his shoulder was going to be good enough. Had to go with Dante Culpepper. I think that changes probably sports in general because you probably have Nick Saban who might have, along with his LSU national championship, maybe a ring or two playing in a division against Bill Belichick. Who knows if the Patriots had their run if Nick Saban's down there in Miami. I get what you're saying, but you got a coach is only good if you could tether him to a good quarterback.
Right.
So I guess the question will be, do you think Trevor Lawrence, he's heralded out as this, do you think he's good enough to be that guy?
Look, there are certain things I look for quarterbacks to be successful that I expect to see. Lawrence was a guy who never really showed me that he could do the things in the pros like, this guy's a can't miss. That's what I mean.
Right.
Do I think, look, does he have the athletic ability and the throwing ability? Of course. But the big thing in the pros, like we talked about last week, is can you read a defense? Are you mentally tough enough when you get knocked on your butt to get up and to try again? Can you make up the differential speed between a cornerback in the NFL and a cornerback in college is night and day. So if you can understand all those things and you can make that 20-yard out pass consistently without getting it picked for 6, I think you'll be okay. But if you can't read defenses, if you make bad choices, if you mentally aren't tough enough to withstand the punishment that you're going to get, and I believe he'll probably get punished behind not the greatest of offensive lines, I like that Etienne is there to kind of take a little bit of pressure off him. Maybe Tebow could help him with some things as far as getting out of the pocket, avoiding a really solid hit so he doesn't get that real hard contact. But they're not supposed to win their first year. If they win more than like 5-6 games, that is gravy. You just want to see them come out, compete. You want to see them in games. You want to see him develop. Remember, Peyton Manning's first year, 26 touchdowns, 28 interceptions.
That's right.
Okay? Not everybody's like Andrew Luck and goes 11-5 and gets into the playoffs. So just if they can be competitive, win 4, 5, 6 games maybe, set themselves up for the draft next year, get more players. I think that's what you expect to see down in Jacksonville, along with a different attitude that's not, okay, when we play and there's just chaos. And you know that when you're a fan. If you come out and like the games are competitive, you can see that the players are getting better. The defensive players understand their assignments. Their offensive players aren't missing blocks every play. That's what you want to see.
Exactly. So we'll see how it all turns out in Jacksonville. But according to a lot of reports, Ian Rappaport reporting today that Tim Tebow will be a Jacksonville Jaguar coming up next year. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we'll introduce a new segment. Who's better? We'll debate Auburn and Alabama running backs over the course of the years, and we'll have a nice little debate here on Overtime.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, you want to get into this? We'll just start throwing out questions.
Oh, hey, TD, did you see where I changed? I took that line out, the Cribbs and Bobby Humphrey? On that first one? Okay, good deal. Perfect. Welcome back to Overtime here on WOTM. We're going to debut a new segment here tonight. We'll call it Who's Better? And over the course of the next few weeks and months, we'll pick a topic and debate it. So here tonight, we're talking running backs. And obviously Alabama, the state of Alabama is known for running backs, putting running backs from the high school level to the college level and from the college level to the professional level. These are the ones that we will debate here today. Basically, and Mark, you'll break this down in a second. We'll take a look at the top as far as the career numbers, but you try to make it somewhat sympathetic where you try to balance out the number of carries and the number of attempts with the overall production. Obviously, both Alabama and Auburn play in the SEC West, play comparative schedules, so you'll get a pretty nice comparison based on similar talent. Mm-hmm. And tonight, I thought you had a good point with both Alabama and Auburn running backs. What were some of your findings and some of the things that you wanted to compare as you took a look at both schools?
Yeah, I wanted to compare guys that it was fair to compare to. Like, it's hard to compare guys that had, 150 more rushing attempts,
right,
or if they did one thing specifically well, that they didn't make up in another category.
Right.
Most of these guys, when you average out the numbers, these guys were consistently right near each other. Mm-hmm. As far as career numbers. They played the same amount of years. They had the same amount of yards per carry. That was another big thing.
Right. That's
probably the best indicator is yards per carry. But also, there are differences between whether you are a diverse running back and can catch the ball out of the backfield.
Right.
Sometimes that's the difference in comparing these guys. But especially when you're dealing with big names like Bo Jackson, okay? Mm-hmm. Everybody loves Bo Jackson, one of my favorite athletes of all time.
Right.
This guy, could do anything. And when you grew up in the 80s, Bo Jackson was it.
Right.
Okay, he was kind of like, you had Mike Tyson in boxing, you had Bo Jackson in football and baseball.
Right.
And I still remember a 1989 All-Star game hitting a ball like 450 feet off of Rick Russell. Mm-hmm. This guy was just a sick athlete. So there's really not many guys I can compare him to.
Right.
Because he's just so athletically gifted. And I still remember when he got hurt against the Bengals in the playoffs, no one really thought it was that serious an injury. Next thing you know, he's never the same again. Najee Harris is a guy that can run the ball really well, but he also is one of the best receivers. So that helps make up some of the differential between him and yards from scrimmage between him and Bo. There is a tremendous, they have a lot of similarities overall when you look at the final numbers between Jackson and Harris. You look at the fact that from yards from scrimmage, Harris has more than Jackson. You wouldn't think that going into it, would you?
Right.
And he also has more touchdowns, 12, when you consider receiving and rushing, than Bo Jackson does. But Bo, obviously, 0.6 more yards per carry. Again, not bad for Najee.
Exactly.
6 yards per carry against Bo Jackson, who's like the greatest running back I ever saw, the most abusive to some of these defensive players. And the other thing I love that Najee does that Bo does too is he'll punish you as well.
Exactly.
With the stiff arm here and there. Both guys are very similar. If I still had to choose, I would choose Bo because he was just that Tecmo Bowl Bo Jackson alone. You couldn't tackle him, and you run away from everybody.
He's a legendary, but if you were to pick an Alabama running back, I think you got the closest one is the latest one that we just saw. He also has a nose for the end zone, 57 touchdowns. So a lot of props to Najee Harris, but I'm with you.
Not much, though. Not much separates them now.
Exactly.
And that's a heck of a compliment for Najee.
No doubt about it. And Najee was also one of the finalists, one of the last top 5 in Heisman voting as well, where Bo Jackson ended up winning that award. Next up, we'll go to Derrick Henry and Cadillac Williams. Cadillac Williams, a guy from just down the road here in where our studios are in Oxford, Alabama. He's from the Etowah County area. Derrick Henry obviously had a monster career both at Alabama, and he's continuing that in the NFL right now with the Tennessee Titans. Some of the things that you thought as you compared these two running backs are?
Well, I think you have Cornell has more rushes, but again, look at the yards per carry. Henry has more yards per carry. And you see Henry, I remember in one of the games against Auburn, carried the ball, like 44 times?
That's right.
Okay, he was an absolute workhorse. You see what he's doing in the NFL. Henry's one of the best running backs in pro football. Heisman Trophy winner also, the second guy to ever win it at Alabama. And again, there were none of them before Saban came in.
That's right.
Both of them running backs. Again, only one touchdown separates them in touchdowns from scrimmage now. This isn't rushing touchdowns. Touchdowns from scrimmage. About 3,000 yards separates them overall because they really were, you look at receiving yards, not much of a difference receiving yard. Henry isn't much of a wide receiver, neither is Cornell. They both will abuse you and just keep giving them the ball. But there's a huge difference in carries, and that's probably why the numbers are a little bit different overall. But again, yards per carry, Henry and compared to Cornell, a little bit better. But Cornell could abuse you as well. And just because he has more carries, I think that speaks to the fact that they just kept feeding him the ball, So they really used him, just an abusive back. I remember when he was with Tampa Bay, man, those first couple years before he got kind of overused.
Right.
And some of that started at Auburn. He was just nasty.
Exactly. Cornell also, that was the focal point of their offense. I mean, they were a running football team. Then he ended up splitting carries with Ronnie Brown. And Derrick Henry played at a school where they were just starting to emerge in the passing game. That's probably why you saw
it's true, because they are known for their power running game all that time, which they still kind of did, but that was like Jalen Hurts and Tua. I would say Henry, I probably would take Henry over Cornell, not because they're, he's so much better, but I think he's just a little more diverse. I think he's a little bit better receiver, has better hands, and can probably, just more abusive and consistently with getting more yards per carry than Cornell. But, I mean, that's not a slight on Williams at all.
Exactly. And Cadillac obviously had a great high school career as well, played great in the NFL. And also Derrick Henry, one of those guys that gets better as the game goes along. I think is kind of a good point you hit on. Next one we'll talk about is Shaun Alexander and James Brooks. And a lot of players might not know who James Brooks is. And we'll also compare them to also Mark Ingram and Stephen Davis, the last
you both of them at
the
same time here now.
Exactly. And it's one of the situations where I think with Shaun Alexander, obviously a name that many people know, ended up having a great rookie year in the NFL, a good career in the NFL. And Mark Ingram, Heisman Trophy winner, and Stephen Davis was a bowling ball running back that a lot of people remember from his days at Auburn.
Well, look, I think Shaun Alexander was a workhorse, and he just got the ball. He was kind of like what Cornell Williams was. That was back in the old days of Alabama, where you just give the ball, run the ball 400 times a game. James Brooks was a guy who wasn't going to play consistently, wasn't an every down guy. In the pros, he wound up going to the Super Bowl with Cincinnati in 1988 in that attack offense with Boomer Esiason. But also, he came into the NFL with Dan Fouts and one of the best offenses in San Diego. A very diverse running back, a guy who, I mean, he could beat you as a running back, but he was probably better as a receiver, definitely a third down receiver. That's how he first came into the league. Remember him and Lionel Little Train James were both very similar. He was a little bigger, James Brooks. I like James Brooks better because he's more diverse. Alexander, if you just wanted to line up and beat the defense to death, Alexander was perfect. He had a great career with Seattle. I remember a Sunday Night Football game where he had 200 yards and 4 touchdowns at halftime. So if you want a pure running back, you could have Alexander. Wasn't a bad receiver either, but Brooks was probably faster, more diverse, And if he got used more, again, he was a guy basically a third down back, and then later in his career, he became better and more used. But I like Brooks' diversity. To me, he was one of the best third down backs I've ever seen, and he could be equally as effective coming out of the backfield as a receiver than he would be on those draw plays that would seemingly go for endless yards, whether it was Fouts or Size and giving him the ball.
Exactly, and also with Mark Ingram is one of those guys that ended up he was thought of well out of high school. His dad played in the NFL, obviously, and then he came on the scene at Alabama, and I think a lot of people really didn't kind of know who he was, and then built a name up for himself, ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, and compared to a guy like Stephen Davis, who got a lot of hype and a lot of accolades early on in his career at Auburn, but their numbers are really, really comparable as well.
Yeah, again, Ingram has more carries, so that's why there's a little bit of a differential. But Davis was another workhorse when he was in the NFL. A real tough guy, a guy that did pretty good under the Redskins system. But Ingram is just a special talent. The first ever Heisman Trophy winner. If I had to pick between the two, I would probably take Ingram. But again, Davis, if you want a guy that can just beat you to death, and Davis also wasn't that bad of a receiver.
Right.
He was really the first kind of big guy that I remember, big running back, that I would notice catching the ball, because most of them, his size, weren't as consistent catching the ball in the NFL as he was. So again, these are hard things. I don't want to make it seem like I favor one team over the other.
Right.
You try to break these down as fair as you can. The way I do it is, which guy would I want on my team as far as being diverse and putting more pressure on the defense? I think that's Ingram versus Davis, and I think that's James Brooks versus Alexander.
Exactly. I think I'd go there with you. I think Ingram, to me, especially on the college level, has been really, really good in that regard. And also, I think I'd go with Shaun Alexander. I might go with both Alabama running backs on that one, but a very, very good list.
So, overall. So
that's correct.
Okay, so you got Najee Harris, you taking?
Yeah, I'll take Bo.
Okay. Henry and Cornell?
And I'm taking Cadillac.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alexander Brooks?
And then I'm taking Alexander and Mark Ingram.
All right.
So kind of a split with the schools and with the allegiances. And obviously we're splitting hairs here because these are all great running backs.
Great argument.
Exactly, no doubt about it. And we'll have more topics as we go forward. That's a great one to start off with today. As football fans, we'll argue that one until the day that we die, obviously, with Alabama and with Auburn. Coming up next here on Overtime, we are talking college baseball. It's a great time of year. We're heating up with college baseball. Also dip back into the major leagues as well. Join us for that next year on Overtime.
What'd you think?
Yeah, good.
Who'd you pick?
I went with the same pick, but I was thinking I probably would have matched Brooks up against Derrick Henry and Shaun Alexander against Cadillac. Because it looked like their numbers was more similar. Especially running style.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I should have put Alexander against Cornell. Yeah, that's true. Good catch. Although Henry